Dave the Rave, Roving the Rock, at Gordon The Gopher's house in Sannox.
Yep.
Because Gordon's going to ask me questions today. He's in charge of everything.
If I get a chance, yeah.
If he gets a chance, about me and my run round the island, 56 miles at 56 years old. 56.
Yeah. Because, it's very... Yeah, because I'm interested to know, you've told me bits about it, but obviously more detail about it. And also you've heard some other people that have done it in the past, and you've heard about people that are planning to do it in the future.
Well, that's the reason it's come up now.
Yeah.
Just mention them now.
Chat to you about you could about there's a chap that's coming up that's doing it,
right?
And that's the reason why you wanted to talk about your day when you did it.
On arransound.com digital radio, they're doing a piece every day at the moment because on the fella Graeme Johnston, who's the youth work project manager with Arran Youth Foundation, and they've got their cabins in Lamlash, and he has done a couple of ultras in the past, couple of 40-mile runs to raise funds for them, and he's raised about £1,000. And on the 19th of May, he intends to run round Arran and raise more funds and hopefully bigger amounts of money than he's raised in the past to help support that. So he's doing it for a good cause. And when he's been on the radio, they've mentioned me at the end of it every day, because I have run round Arran in the past 2 years ago, and in fact they were saying maybe you could get some tips from Dave, and Dave could tell his story, and you can get any helpful hints and things. And so I thought I'll do that. I'll record me what I did, and also say what mistakes I made, and that hopefully gives him some attention on his run on the 19th of May as well. Yeah. Okay.
So as I say, when did you first have the idea for kind of this run? You did, but again, because that's something I've thought of for a few years. When did the thought of just running around the island? When did you first think of that as something you would like to do in the future?
I came to Arran in 1984, and in the late 80s they had people were running around, walking around Arran. It was quite a popular thing. They did several walks around Arran, and it would take all day and all night really. They would do it in the dark as well, leave at 5 and 6 in the morning. And we did say there was a few names you can remember. Neil Gillis, what other names you're thinking of?
John Pennicott, recently Andrew Bunting, I'm sure David Copperwheat's done it. That's right. I do know of somebody who tried to do it years ago but failed. I'm sure Finlay MacDonald, he was in our running club.
Right.
Remember, he tried it, but he never managed it. So yeah.
But anyway, I got the idea from that. I thought that would be great to get around Island non-stop, and I started running in my mid-30s when I stopped smoking. That was my reward. That at that time was the hardest thing I'd ever done, stopping smoking. Incredibly hard to do, very addictive. And my reward was a gym membership at the Ochrani, and in the end I ended up working there for 5 years or so, and it got me into running. As long as I was running, I stayed off the cigarettes because I didn't want, one can't go with the other anyway.
So when you say you first got the idea for going around the island, before you started running, did you think I would like to walk around the island or I would like to run around the island?
I only really thought about running around it after I started running because it would be a challenge. I'd lived here in the end, but I did it for nearly 40 years. And so it was my whole world. Arran becomes your whole world, and you can conquer your whole world.
Good.
And so I saw that as really the ultimate challenge. And then as I got closer to the time when I was going to do it 2 years ago, I was coming up to the age of 56. And by a happy coincidence, it's 56 miles round Arran, and that was a mile for every year.
Yeah,
so what better way to celebrate your birthday?
Good challenge for you.
A great challenge.
When you're 56.
And so that was what gave me the idea, and the opportunity came because of COVID.
All the time to have to train.
Because I had
So before you did this, what was the longest actual race you'd done?
The longest race I'd ever done was the Siskin Half Marathon.
Yeah.
I'd won the first local trophy 2 or 3 times, but that was 13 miles. That's a half marathon, a healthy 13, and I'd never considered it was a good thing to go further than that. And also, if you're going to find out what you're capable of in a marathon, which you've done before, you've got to do massive mileage to find that out, because you've got to be fast, but also you've got to be comfortable running 20 miles or so most of the distance, and that's an enormous commitment of time. I didn't really want to do that, so I wanted to challenge myself over these years. I could do that in a 10k and a 5k in quite a short space of time. I could do an hour training and really put in a full session for a 10k or 5k. You can't do that for a marathon. You've got to do long runs every week. You've got to do 3-hour runs and things, and I don't think it's really good for you. So I've always really ignored the marathons, and plus being stuck in Arran like we are, really stuck, but confined to Arran in a lot of ways. We're so far from everywhere else. We celebrate being here, but we can't really get to races easily. So I really just stuck to local races.
So what was out with racing? What was the longest run, either time or distance?
In training,
just
okay. Training for this,
I'm gonna go for a long run. What's a long?
Well, I'd been a few long runs with you, which were like maybe 22 miles in the past, and Bean Sprouts. I remember we went right around the South End one time, and but in training for this, I bought a book called Relentless Forward Progress, and it's an ultra marathon training book. It was really great. It was all I needed. It had a training plan in it for every level, and it ramped up the mileage, and it focuses on the long run. That's the main thing. You don't really need to think about speed so much. You just need to ramp up the long run so you become accustomed to it, because over 20 miles you go into fat burning, and you need to get used to that. So you've got to do runs over 20 miles. It's a whole different system of energy production. You can run for 20 miles on the energy that you've got, and then you're onto fat burning.
And then hit the wall.
Which happens in the marathon. So it ramped it up, and so it actually made me do several runs that were marathon or just a beyond marathon. I did a 26, a 28 and a 30 mile run. 30 was the longest I did, and to be honest I was trashed in a 30 mile run. And I did them on grass or on the AstroTurf to protect my joints, because I've got kind of arthritic knees and things, and I'm 56 years old at this point, so you don't want to get injured.
So as I say, you chose to do it on your own and unsupported, so obviously what were your reasons for that, rather than having somebody going around with you, or obviously letting people know that you were going to do it? So
it all comes down to one thing: because I expected to fail, because it was fear of failure. I hadn't done the distance before. I'd one time casually tried to run round Arran with Bean Sprouts, and we'd done about 35 miles, and we had little bags on our back, and we're carrying all our juice and food with us, but we hadn't trained for it, and we failed at 35 miles. But this training that I'd done, and I did follow it religiously all the way through the winter. I'd done all the miles I was meant to do. I'd gone up to the biggest weeks, which was 70, 80 and 90 miles, but it hadn't convinced me I was capable of anything more than 30 miles. I really struggled when I got beyond 24, 26, every time I did it, 3 times. And so although I was in great physical condition, I'd done the training, I wasn't convinced I had the endurance. And so I thought, I'll not tell anybody. I'm doing this for myself anyway. I'm not going to let anybody else down if I fail, so I'm not telling anybody. I'll let them know that I'm training for it and that I'm wanting to do it one day, but I'm not telling anyone the actual day, because it will stress me. It'll put a burden on my shoulders of expectation, especially if I was getting sponsored, which this fella's so brave to do. I mean, he's done it before, so maybe he's got more confidence in me. He's done 40 mile runs. Graeme Johnston.
Again, sponsorship can motivate you as well.
I didn't need motivation.
As I say, you had reasons for motivating yourself, but if you get people sponsoring you, again, it's that kind of
keep you going.
It can keep you going. Thinking, people are, expecting, people are relying, people are giving me money. So but
that's where I'm strange, because I don't need any motivation. As you know, I will push myself to the maximum. If I've decided something, I will do it all on my own. I'll run till I'm sick if I'm testing myself, and I'm proud of the fact I can do that. And the motivation wasn't the thing for me. What would stop me is other people expecting me to do it and letting them down, fear, and also make me stressed. Maybe I wouldn't sleep so well. I had to take all of that out of it. So I just did it unsupported. It was going to make it a bit harder being unsupported, but nobody would know.
So you ran it on, as you mentioned, pick the date, 2nd of April 2021. Obviously, you chose that date because it was, a decent day weather-wise.
Springtime, yeah.
Springtime. So obviously the next thing is why did you pick Lagg to start and finish it, and why did you pick the kind of clockwise direction?
I picked Lagg because, again, I was expecting or thinking there was a good chance I would fail, and so I thought if I was to run from, say, Brodick and go north round Loch Ranza, maybe I would fail at Thunderguy or Catacall or somewhere that was far away, and I wouldn't be able to get home. So the thinking was, if I started in Lagg and went clockwise, I'd get all of the remote part of the island, the west coast of the island out the way first in the first marathon, because I know I can run a marathon. I'll be up to Loch Ranza by the time I've done a marathon. I can definitely do that. And then coming down the Bogley Hill, down, it's all flat at Corrie and Sannox. So I was thinking I'll probably make Brodick and then I might fail. But I'll be safe because I'm in Brodick. I can get a bus home to White Bay where I live. I can get a lift from my daughter.
I'm at food.
I can get food. Everything's fine. I'm not in the middle of nowhere. I'm not stuck.
Yeah.
So that was merely it. And also, lastly, I thought I get the easy miles out of the way because all the way up the west coast is pretty flat. Whereas down the south, where Kilmorey is and Butterhill, it's up and down the entire time around Kildonan and Butterhill. And I thought, well, I'll get the most miles in I can, so if I'm going to fail, at least I've got all the easy ones, so I'll have maxed the mileage I can get out of it,
So why Lagg?
It was just purely that, because I reckoned I could get to Brodick. It's as simple as that. That was as
so
far
not
away
your
from
house because it was close. So you reckon Lagg, you reckon you could make it to Brodick?
Because it's 8 miles to White Bay and then 9 miles to Lagg, so that's 17.
Okay.
So I've done 40 miles by the time I get to Brodick, and I figured I'll probably do that, and then I might well fail, but I'm safe at that point. At any point between Brodick and White Bay kind of thing, I'm fine. I'll get a lift. I can put my thumb out even.
So you had, obviously you picked a really good day weather-wise, so clothing-wise you didn't obviously need to wear too much.
Well, I'd chosen that day. You were saying, why did you choose that time? That time of year was spring, so it wasn't going to be too hot. I'd chosen that day by just narrowing it down a few days before because it was a good forecast. It was still and warm. It was a nice weather forecast, and I thought, right, well, that I won't be held back by it being freezing or rainy or windy. The weather's going to be nice. So I only decided a few days before that that's when I was going to do it. So I didn't really taper down properly with my training. I did a bit. I knew I was going to do it in the next couple of weeks kind of thing, but I didn't know what day exactly. And it was only a few days before.
And obviously, because you were reduced hours that time, you obviously had more option days wise and all.
I had more options because I was only working for a lot of the training. It went back up to full time again, but for a lot of it I was only working 2 days a week, which was great. Because of COVID, the roads were empty at that time of year. Everyone was locked down, but you could go for runs, you could walk your dog and things, and I was working, but I was working less hard than normal, and so this was great for me to train on. I had more time. There was nothing on the road to stop me, and so I figured I've got a nice day. I'll just wear vest and shorts. I didn't wear a sun hat. I just thought I'll be fine because it's kind of spring, kind of just slightly warm day. It'll be fine.
But there's been some good weather in the last few springs. So obviously, unsupported, you had to organise your food and drink.
Yep.
So how did you go about that, and obviously what did you organise?
The day before I was working and I had an unusually long lunch, and I'd known a few days before I was getting this, and it was about 2 hours long. So that was just enough time for me to jump in the car and drive around the whole island, kind of frantically deciding where to put these Chinese takeaway tubs. I'd got Chinese takeaway tubs and a bottle of Lucozade, and I'd worked out from studying on the internet, you can only absorb 350 calories an hour. So every 8 miles I was going to absorb about 350 calories, and so I had to hide them, and so it just happened to work out perfectly from Lagg. Every 8 miles I came to a road sign, like a 30 mile an hour going into a village or something memorable, I could just bury it right beside that sign, just hide it under some rocks or whatever, and the little bottle, and then drive round again. So I didn't know where I was going to be putting them, but it just worked out perfectly. Every 8 miles, 350 calories between the juice and the flapjack banana and the little sweeties that I had. Make sure I eat all them. I'll always have these supplies, and that was my best guess at what I was going to need. Right. And so I did that the day before, got back to work again, everything was in place for me to run the next day.
Good. So did you have a kind of target, firstly time, and assume that's, would be the same as a goal, so did you have a kind of target?
90% of my target, really the whole thing, was just not to stop, not to fail. I was scared of failure. I expected it. I thought the chances were I wouldn't manage it, but I was going to give it my best shot. The training had gone well though. I had managed, I hadn't got injured. My knees had managed, which was a surprise, because I've had problems with these knees for years, and I hadn't been able to run a step the whole of 2018. Not a step the entire year. So the training was amazing. Sorry, what was the second part of your question there?
Did you have a target time?
A target time, that's what it was.
Goal.
Yes, that's what it was.
Obviously,
that's it.
Did you have a target time?
Yes.
And I can't believe. I'd assume you would have. It's like you're the same as me.
You got to challenge yourself.
No, I just want to finish it, but
I wanted to finish it. The main thing was not to fail. But on a golden day, if I was to succeed and get round and still hit the time, I thought 10 hours was, anything under 10 hours would be perfect. Under 11 hours would be perfectly acceptable, but my best possible would be under 10, and that would be the perfect end to the day. So that was my outside goal, but really it was good. Just
well
not to fail.
Inside that, So for the hardest kind of times when you're doing your run, can you think of what was say the most physical hardest point of your run?
When I went round Ireland, I ran from Lagg to Loch Ranza, and that was a marathon in about 4 hours, and I felt comfortable and good all the way around. I started to struggle when I went up the Bogley. That was disappointing. I ran up the Bogley, almost all of it, and I really should have probably slowed down a bit at that point, because when I run back down the other side of the Bogley, my legs were stiffening up, and I thought, well, that's not so good. I'm only halfway round. So that was a warning shot. And then when I got to Brodick eventually, I was really, really tired at that point. At 35 miles round, I couldn't hear my radio anymore. I couldn't hear the music. Only thing I was doing after 35 miles, and especially after 40 miles, was just not stopping. And that's what this book's about.
So that was obviously the second half, gradually tiring, but what was the kind of most physically hardest point on your run? I'm
just putting one foot in front of the other from maybe 40 miles onwards, and I'm not thinking about anything else. Right. Just thinking about the next challenge. And I managed to get from Brodick to Lamlash, and then from Lamlash to Whiting Bay. That's where my house is. At that point, I realised too late that I had a heat stroke or sunstroke. I was boiled. I went into the house. First time I went to the toilet was in my house in Whiting Bay. So that is 40 miles round Ireland, and I haven't done a pee, right? So that means I've not had enough liquid. I've been boiled with not having a sun hat on. I went frankly looking for my sun hat. So I'm dehydrated at this point and too hot. And also totally done in. So that was the hardest point, because I could have just sat down in the chair in Whiting Bay in my house and stopped.
So that was like, as you say, you were physically, struggling, but mentally, obviously, you were keeping.
I was thinking I stopped.
Getting to that point. So was that when you got to your house, you'd say was the hardest mental point to get going again, or was there anything after that you mentally was harder?
The hardest bit I would say was in my house, because when I was in the house I thought, that's it, I'm just going to sit down, that's me duffed, I've given it my best shot. And then I realised what kept me going was this perverse thing, which is fear of failure, because I'm going to do it again. I'll put my body through it again. I'll still attempt to challenge in the future, and I'll be older, and also I'll have failed. So I don't want to. So that however duffed I was, it was a motivator because I didn't want to ever be this duffed again. I was completely trashed at this point. I had nothing left apart from trying not to stop, just trying to keep moving. The speed was going down, and so it was a fear of having to do it twice that got me back out of Whiting Bay, out of the house. I was about 10 minutes in the house at this point, and back on the road again.
So you got going again, and obviously the last wee bit. How were you feeling the last wee bit? So how were you feeling the kind of last wee bit when you were kind of know you're needing the end, and at what point did you think I'm going to finish this?
I had 9 miles to do from Whiting Bay to Lagg, but that seemed like something that I couldn't possibly manage.
It's kind of majority uphill.
Yeah, very, it's right uphill because
Really,
I was at sea level in Whiting
a wee
Bay.
bit down, up, a wee bit down,
That's
up,
right.
so you
Up to
continually
Butter
just
Hill.
stop. Yeah.
And it never goes back down to sea level again.
Yeah.
So that was the hardest bit. And all of that, I thought I might well fail. I was so ill, I was expecting to, at any point, stagger sideways off into a bush and fall into it and not get back out again. I thought I was in danger. I was having, so maybe 5-6 miles from the end, I was starting to get chest pains, and also my entire body was pins and needles, proper pins and needles, sore. And I knew it was breaking down. I'd got heat exhaustion, whatever it was, and just dehydration and tiredness. Everything was stopping working. I knew that the end was nigh, and I still didn't know I was going to do it, even 5 or 6 miles from the end. Neil May caught up with me in the car because he'd heard from the postwoman, Kirsty Smith, but she'd seen me, delivered the mail to him, and he had been told that I was doing this. And he'd rushed out in his car, and he kept me company for the last 4 or 5 miles, and that was enormously encouraging for me. Not because I expected to do it, just because I thought if I need to go to hospital, he'll be able to drive me there. And also because he was behind me with the car, he could fend off anybody.
So you reckon when he came with that, you thought, right, okay,
at least I'm safe.
I'm going to finish.
I'm safe from harm. I wasn't sure I would finish, but I knew that I wouldn't never be seen again in a bush, because that's really why I felt. I thought I might just stagger off and that's it, daft.
Okay.
I need medical help and I'll not get it. He'll take me to the hospital, and that's how bad I felt. Right. Anyway, so I carried on. He's behind me, making sure that no one annoys me or cuts me in and stuff. So I don't need to think about anything apart from not stopping. And then he let me know about 2 miles from the end that I was going to manage it, because he told me it was all downhill and there was only 2 miles to go. And at that time I realised, and I started stagger running, I had almost nothing left, and I started sobbing and running at the same time.
Nice.
And it was the first time, and you've said that you've done that.
Yeah. So that's getting there, sobbing, running. Neil's with you. So when you actually finished at Lagg, what can you remember as the first emotion when you actually stopped where you'd started?
It wasn't a celebration of achievement. It was relief at not failing. It was fear. I expected probably to fail, and for the last third of the run I thought I was going to fail, and even until that 2 miles from the end I didn't know if I had it in me to
so
get
on that subject of the fear of failing, how do you think you would have felt if you had failed?
Terrible. I mean, absolutely gutted, because I knew I'd done everything as hard as I could. I'd done the training. It was 56 at 56. The summer would have been coming. The weather would have been worse. And I thought this was my chance, because I was in good condition. I was slim, and fit. In fact, well, I can show you a picture in a wee second. So I was skinny and running great times, I just couldn't see I'd have a better chance.
What do you think you personally have learnt from the experience of doing that around the Iron Run?
I've learned that I'm more capable than I thought I was. I think I've probably learned also that I'm not capable of doing any longer than that, because that was as much as I had the strength for, unless the training was different.
You finish your run, so obviously kind of directly after, obviously the run, how did you feel? Well, mentally, but mainly I suppose physically. So how did you feel hour, 2, 3 hours after the run, and how did you feel say a few days after the run?
Immediately after the run, I became a cripple because I sat down in the car, and then Neil May and Pete Bowers tried to get me to go in front of the Lagg Hotel for a photo, and I couldn't stand up. And so one of them had to take me on the shoulder, the other on the shoulder, and carry me in front of the hotel. I had nothing left. My legs were completely seized up at this point. I felt great. I felt elated, of course, you know, and relieved, but I couldn't move. This is a photo of me with Beanie Beansprouts and Tom Gilmore giving me the trophy a year later, because they couldn't present it to me at the time because of COVID. So that was a lovely surprise, getting given that trophy.
Why the scarf around your neck?
Because you had to have that was the scarf, was the mask. You had to wear them at work because it was still COVID.
Right.
This is the picture of me finishing outside the Lagg Hotel, looking really quite refreshed and fresh there, but actually I was disastrously tired out, and I was only standing, but I couldn't move.
You're probably wishing you thinking, I wish I could lie on that bed.
This is a picture of me just finishing, come around the last corner, still running, and that was me with about 50 yards left to go. And this is the actual trophy that I was presented with from Arran Runners a year after I did it. By surprise, I was at work at Calmac and Brodick, and they came to my workplace and presented me with this hand-made ash trophy in the shape of the Isle of Arran. It's got a brass plaque in the front of it, and it says 56 miles at age 56 from Arran Runners to David Black to commemorate a magnificent round Arran run, 2nd of April 2021, 9 hours and 17 minutes. When I did the run, I specifically bought a Garmin watch that would have a battery that lasted long enough to record the whole run. It recorded it at 9 hours and 17 minutes, although I also had about an extra 25 minutes, which was spent mostly finding Chinese takeaway tubs and Lucozade bottles that I'd buried in the way around because the run was unsupported. So that was my running time, 9 hours and 17 minutes, but it was closer to 9 hours and 40 minutes or so if you include me just kind of digging about getting my supplies out as I went round Island. It took me 2 or 3 minutes each time every 8 miles, and my one toilet stop. So that's on Strava, and that shows that I did do it in that time, and a lot of people saw me, of course, going on around the island as well. The trophy is a wonderful thing. It's my favourite possession because it's something I've got for life, and I get to keep it, unlike most running trophies which you would win and then you would put your name on it and then it passes to the next person. When I'm an old person, if I'm not already an old person, I'll still have this, and it will remind me of my achievement forever. So really, such a wonderful thing to get. I'm very grateful for getting this, and also, of course, very grateful just for the physical ability that I had to be able to complete it and not fail. Okay, Dave the Rave, Gordon the Gopher, over and out.